If you want a better tomorrow, start heading for it today. Visit Tony Burke Motors, your local Toyota retailer, and find out how you can lower your emissions and pay less tax than a diesel with Toyota's incredible range of self-charging hybrid cars. There's never been a better time to join the thousands of Galway drivers who've made Toyota the #1 selling car brand in Galway for the 7th consecutive year. Visit tonyburkemotors.ie to search our fantastic selection of approved used cars. Start your electric journey in a Toyota hybrid today. Contact Tony Burke Motors on 480-123 or email sales@tonyburkemotors.ie. Toyota, built for a better world.
Well, we're back. Tribe Talk is back for a brand new season. We were happy enough, I suppose, to get a break around Christmas time last year, but we didn't envisage it going on this long. So here we are back in the recording on the 4th of May, looking ahead to the first round of the 2021 Allianz League. Myself and David here again, the normal two, the traditional two, back with you again this evening. Chunky claims to be the busiest man in Ireland, so he's ruled himself out for this week, but we'll be sure to drag him on in the next week or two and get him back to you. But look, David, great to be back. Great to have such a busy schedule to look ahead to, because it's been sorely lacking the last couple of weeks and months, really, hasn't it?
That's for sure. We're back all right. With a small bit more hair anyway. At least I have a small bit anyway. Crying out for a barber. So any chance there's any kind of barbers going out there that we might can get on board as well, we wouldn't say no. That could do us a turn. But yeah, no. All cotton aside, it's mighty, isn't it, Patrick? It's only when it's gone you'd miss it. I suppose we're looking at Christmas Day when we're busy with the under 20, and you're thinking, geez, I wouldn't mind a break for a couple of weeks. But now I think it was calculated up today. I think it's 5 months since the Galway seniors since they were last out, should I say? So, looking forward to it. Mouth-watering schedule as well for Galway, which is always a good thing.
Absolutely, yeah. First things first, I suppose, just to say a massive thanks to Tony Burke Motors for coming on board as sponsors for all of our Allianz League podcasts for this year. And brilliant to have your support, lads. And I don't know how we'll shape up as sales reps for you or anything like that. But if you are looking for early interest in a new car or a used car or anything like that, log on to tonyburkemotors.ie and the lads there will sort you out. So get in touch with the lads on that front. But look, I suppose, David, it's kind of, as you alluded to there, it's been sorely missed really over the last number of months. I know myself, like Sundays or just they were a day you would look forward to so much in the height of the GAA season. But for me, anyhow, the last couple of months they've been probably the day of the week you dread the most, in that there's just nothing to do really. So in that regard, we're fairly sorted now for the next number of weeks. We've Galway with 5 league games to play in 6 weeks, and then the 2 or 3 weeks off before they start off their championship campaign. So it's going to be all go, and it's going to be brilliant for lads involved, I suppose, for players. And we were at the press conference last week for ahead of the league, and we had Pádraig Mannion and Shane O'Neill both there, and they were in disagreement about the lead in and the run into the start of the games. Shane O'Neill was hoping for a nice few weeks training with the lads, but Pádraig is happy enough with his 3 weeks and gets straight into games then. But it just shows, I suppose, they're like the rest of us, whether you're under 8 or 10 or you're a senior in the country like them fellas, you just want to get out and get playing games, don't you?
Yeah, that's for sure. And we're gone from a famine to an absolute feast as well in terms of TV coverage. Like hurling is just it's bananas the amount of coverage that's actually going to be on. I don't know how, especially in the first weekend, how you're going to sit down and watch all the games. I think there's 6 live games as far as I know. I think basically all the league games are on telly. Galway 4 of their league games on telly as well, which is super. Especially at this time when supporters actually can't go, that they're still getting the opportunity, and there's probably a good chance as well, provided there's something on the line, that Galway and Cork in the final round would probably be on telly as well, or you might be able to get it on GAA Go or something along those lines. So please God, but you just talked about even outside of inter-county and senior and all that, just even the kids getting back playing, it was such a huge addition. I'm sure you're the same up in Beha last week. I passed by a few pitches here in Athenry as well, and at times, and saw groups of children playing, and smiles on their faces were they'd warm the heart and warm the soul. So yeah, now please God, no more than yourselves, the club lads like yourselves might be back soon enough as well by the looks of things. So you might have a few smiles in your faces heading up, and you were telling me that Bear in with a really good chance to win the Galway Senior Championship this year. After a bit of controversy in the rear view mirror. So you're saying you're a good outside bet to win, and you were telling myself and Chunky, I believe, did I pick up and to get on Bear now with whatever odds you are. So there's your first tip of the year, everyone that's tuning in.
Yeah, well, I can't see the price cutting a whole pile up for the foreseeable, but yeah, no, look, it'd be great to get back. I suppose in reality, you're going back in whatever is 10th of May. We're officially allowed back in the pods of 15, but you're probably going back running by and large. Whereas by that time of year, in normal circumstances, you'd be all hurling, but I suppose it's better to be running in May than in January in the muck and rain and that. So yeah, sure. It'll be good to get back, and good to get back and see the lads more than anything, because you go through such long periods of not seeing anyone, bar whatever few people are in your house. So on that front, it'll be brilliant to get back. But yeah, looking at actually on the issue of bets for the upcoming championship, and you mentioned Chunky there, Portumna have forked out big money to get him on the coaching ticket for 2021. Now he told me in a phone call last week that he's not playing he's given a hand was the line, the official line, but he's the main man as far as I know. So that's it. There could be signs of life in Portumna yet for 2021. So that they're my tip for the early season tip for the championship. But we'll have to get Chunky on to defend themselves on that front next week.
The band are getting back together, really, aren't they? It's like between, just for people that don't know, there's Chunky, there's Eugene McEntee, there's Jimmy Haver, and Ollie Kenning is involved as well. So it's a real, legends of the club, really, more than anything else. So that's great to see, as well. Before we'll be probably doing extensive previews around club scene anyway, but Chunky's maybe keeping the head down a bit low. He probably doesn't want this announcement to creep out that, as you said, he's a high profile addition, and the transfer market, his value would have soared, during the off season with all he was offering and analysis on here as well. So Portumna are lucky to have him, and I'd say, as you said, yeah, if Bay aren't going to do it, maybe Portumna might this year.
Portumna final we said anyhow, But look, with that we'll crack on. And first thing I suppose to look at is Galway's schedule for the upcoming league. And Westmeath, of course, is where we're starting on Saturday in Cusack Park, Mullingar at 2:00. And after that, then we have Limerick on the 16th of May, Tip on May the 22nd, Waterford on the 6th of June, and Cork on the 13th of June. So only have 1 week off in that time between the Tip and Waterford games. So it's going to be busy. It's going to be hectic. You're going to be calling on your panel hugely. So on that front, Galway seem to be in fairly good fettle. But like looking ahead straight away to Westmeath, it's a great chance for, depending on what sort of team you put out, you'll have lads looking to take a claim straight away. In what has been a difficult few months, fair to say, for inter-county players. Last year, I suppose you would have had the benefit of having the full club season behind you when you started off with the county, and you were already up to match sharpness really in terms of ball work and that side of things. Whereas now this year that's all really you're starting almost from scratch in that regard, and there's a lot to get done in the couple of weeks that the management team have had with players. So what do you reckon the last few months would have been like for the players? Some of them would have been lucky enough to be living with other lads in the panel and been able to do a bit of training with them, and other lads would have had to do it all on their own. So certainly difficult for players.
That's for sure. And you mentioned lads there, being able to train with other people. And Pádraig said it to us at the press conference that he felt he was lucky because he's living with his brother Cathal and Sean Linehan. So there's a hurling made household here in Athenry. That they can probably, they can do a bit, and they even touched on it that they were doing a few contact drills and stuff that other lads might not be able to do, unless you have a younger brother in the house or something, and or maybe an older brother or sister or something like that you could probably maybe try and get a small bit out of that, but it wouldn't have been anything in comparison to saying having Sean Linehan or Cathal coming at you, and from Pádraig's standpoint anyway, just to keep you. But that's the big thing. You mentioned the word sharpness there, Patrick. That's going to take a while to come back. you're you know yourself from playing games. It takes a while. It could be a few weeks. It could be a couple of months, maybe even, before you get back and the ball, zinging first touch off the ground into the hand, or your control in the air is perfect as well. It could take a couple of weeks for that to come, but all these lads are quality players as well. Like, I suppose one thing you forget over this, we're reading kind of a golden era for Galway hurling. Like I was going back through it there today, and I was just writing the piece on Pádraig Mennion, and he made his debut in 2015. And I think all but 1 year since 2015, we've made the last four. The Liam McCarthy, which is phenomenal, really, when you think back to mid 2000s, 90s as well. We're in the doldrums, a lot of bad days rather than good. Whereas if anything has changed now, we have a lot more good days than bad, and we're probably reaping the benefits of being in Leinster as well more than anything else. But you touched on the players there and what would have been like. I suppose, well, for a lot of them it would have been very difficult. These players' lives are so structured and they're so set out for them, and it's they have to watch, they have to eat at the right time, they have to get their amount of sleep in, they have to balance life. A lot of other things take the back seat because of it. But it probably gave them a sense of freedom as well over the few months that they had a chance to experience it and get a bit of a break. And like, I know you see a few county lads and panels, and they're pulling out and stuff like that, and various panels, teams, and individual players. But in fairness to the Galway hurlers, it's very, very few players have pulled out. I think Sean Blaine seems to be the only one who's kind of, from my understanding of it, he's focusing on club action with a Hasker this year, and that's probably a fair thing to do, consider a Hasker senior A, and he's a young fella, and it's hard to know how much game time he would actually get come championship as well. So you can see why maybe a good club season could do that fella the world of good. I suppose other than James Skehill didn't retire, and there's been a few other changes as well. I think we touched and weighed it up in January. The lads that came in, the lads aren't involved, and I know you'll go through it in a while as well. But I'd say we touched on it. I suppose one thing we've kind of heard a lot about is that app that they've used, and Actimate as well. Where they're lodging their mood, and they're lodging how they're feeling physically in training. And I'd say when they did arrive back in training, I'd say a lot of lads were ticking very happy. Maybe whatever it is out of 4 or 5, they were probably saying 5 out of 5 when they could get back training and see the lads, their teammates and friends. And although they might have been ticking on the bodies that they were a bit sore, it might be down to 1 or 2, and I might be wishing them missing a session as well. So that they have all this. It's gone so advanced now these days, and there's so much involved. Like, you forget about stuff like minute detail things like this, this is the stuff that management teams have to be on top of, that maybe that wasn't around 10 or 15 years ago. Lads you train like everyone else, whereas now, if you weren't feeling the best, or you might have been sick a few days beforehand, or you weren't getting a great night's sleep, management can see that in it now, and they can give you a bit of a break, or they can ease you into it. And I think an app like that, and just a good management team are so important when players come back now, because it's a completely different, say, training regime than anything you can do training your own. You're going to be using different muscles, and contact. You just can't replicate it on the training field by yourself. It's just not physically possible. You're twisting and turning. So I'd expect we're going to see probably a few niggly injuries here and there over the course of the year. There'll be a lot of light muscle injuries that might rule that out for a game or two, but it's to be expected. I think all the teams are probably going to have it, so that's another thing to be prepared of. But great, as we said before, great to have it back, and I'm sure the players are delighted. They'll put up with maybe a bit of pain here and there every in between sessions in the early doors, because they know there's some huge games coming down the tracks.
Yeah, and in fairness, Neil mentioned that last week too, that there have been niggling injuries picked up, and they were only back training whatever it was 10 days at that stage, and it's just that switch from whatever you're doing on your own, be it plenty of road running, you can imagine, or a bit of running yourself in the field, making that switch back to proper, I suppose, hurling training. And even hurling running is totally different to going out running a couple of K around the field or down the road or whatever. It's totally different, and the muscles react differently to it, and that will no doubt have led to a few of the injuries that the lads would have picked up over the last week or two. But over the last few months, that contact and that interaction that players would have been able to have with management as regards, it wasn't just a case of management saying, you have to do this today, and you're getting a thumbs up did it or whatever. They're getting feedback. Management are getting feedback all the time. They're saying if a lad found this session easy, found this session difficult, how the bodies are before and after it. That's all being fed back through the Actimat app. And I'm sure for management, it's been an absolute godsend over the last few months, because they've had that personal interaction with players. And it's not a case of a player having to phone up the management saying, geez, I'm in a bit of pain here, in a bit of bother, I maybe can't do that session tomorrow night or whatever. They'll be tracking all that on the app, and you'll see this lad's levels are after dropping the last day or two. Maybe there's a problem here, maybe there's an injury here or something that we need to keep an eye on. And they're smart enough lads to say, look, this lad's clearly working hard, he's in a bit of pain here, we're not going to make him do tonight's session. No, let him get the body back right and go again in a couple of days' time or whatever it may be. So in that regard, it's hugely advantageous and a huge step forward into how players are monitored and taken care of. And it probably, in fairness, it probably showed in Galway last year in the squad that went out, and the injuries they were picking up. There were few and far between, and there was a couple of high profile ones, obviously in the Limerick game. But like Joe getting a belt off Joe Cooney's shoulder, there wasn't a lot. That was a freak incident, and the same with Cahill. It's just that hamstring went after he took a wrong turn. Like, there's nothing you can do. These things happen as well. But by and large, Galway were in fairly good shape last year, and you'd be hoping as well that that's going to help them throughout the league. Depending now, obviously, what approach they're going to take, and we'll move on to that now as well. Just in terms of Galway, where are they at, and what do they want to achieve from this league? It's obviously it's a case of first and foremost going out and beating Westmeath this weekend to more than likely, let's be honest, secure your safety, and after that they can approach the remaining games whatever way they want, whether they want wins or performances or preferably both, for all of us. But as regards where they want to go out with an experienced team and try find their best team ahead of the Leinster semi-final. And then we've got all these new lads joining into the squad, and equally some fellas, they got a bit of game time last year. You look at the likes of TJ Brennan and Evan Nyland, and you'd be hoping to see the likes of them get a lot of game time in this league, wouldn't you?
That's for sure. Evan Nyland in particular, I'd imagine he's going to. I'd be probably nailed on to say that he'll probably start 4 out of 5, maybe 5 out of 5 games, just to give him a proper run, a proper league campaign. Just to really see what he can offer. We saw glimpses of it last year in that game against Limerick, what he can do and what he can produce. And, it's such an advantageous thing for a lot of time when we're talking about Evan Island, so much is said about his free take and it's arguably the best in the county, if not alongside Joe and alongside that. So to have someone like that waiting in the wings, if anything did happen to Joe, is massive. And I think he's put an awful lot of work into his all-round play as well. He was always a quality hurler, but we all know he's not the biggest man in stature in the world, so that's going to be held against him. But to see what he did when he came on against Limerick, like a team of giants last year, was just phenomenal, really. We were under the cosh. He was a man who really stood up. He was standing on the sideline there for about 5 or 6, 7, 8 minutes when Joe was down. It's times the mind can wander in Croke Park. Probably it was a small bit easier when there was no crowd, maybe, which might be the case again this year. But times, like when you're standing on the line there, your mind can start to wander, and then you have to come on and nail a free with basically his first touch from, what was it, 60, 70, 80 yards out the field, and no problem at all, and then to score a point, and then to set up another one. Phenomenal. I'd imagine we'll see a lot of Evan Island during the league. I'd imagine he's probably going to be one of the lads that we'll see huge game time. Truth be told, I'd say Joe, he probably mightn't play against Westmeath. I don't see the real need to risk him against Westmeath. You're probably Limerick a week later, where you could throw him in and see it. But like say himself now, maybe David Burke, Dahi, a few more lads like that. They could be worth, maybe Pádraig Mannion, Cahill. They could be worth experimental with, because you don't want to. There's no point in flogging the lads either, and I know O'Neill and the lads won't do it either, because they've got Lucas there in the strength and conditioning as well. Who's we've just heard so much about him, and he's revered in the role that he plays in there, and he seems to you touched on the lack of injuries last year. And I'd say probably a huge part of that was probably down to his conditioning of them, because I've heard come back, and I know O'Neill touched in the press conference last time, that some of the players that have come in and have come back and they've been in phenomenal shape, which is a great sign. Now, as you touched on it there, you can't do anything about the muscle injuries that you're going to pick up. The little niggles that might annoy you for a few days, maybe a week, that could rule you out of a game or two. But yeah, the other player you mentioned there, TJ Brennan, was another one. Yeah, for sure. I think a great chance to trial him now during the league as well. Aidan Hart could be allowed to put the feet up maybe during the league, and he could be more used in championship. I know he personally from him, he wants to play every game. He always does.
Yeah.
But sometimes you kind of have to pick and choose your battles as well. And we've got such a grueling schedule. Another player might be, starting the defence first. Maybe someone like Jaron Morrissey. He seems to be carrying a bit of a lock last year. I wouldn't mind trialing him now. During the league as well. An experimental run. Like as you said, hypothetically we're likely to beat Westmeath. So after that, then you have a bit of a free run. But they're cracking games that you have ahead of you. Like you've what the last two All-Ireland champions, if the beaten finalists from last year, and you've always Cork, we're always going to cause you problems. They've quality hurlers all over the pitch. Like, so you're going to be playing in hopefully a bit of good weather. Ground should be pretty good. The pitches are never going to be in better nick than they are with all the break that they're coming up. So, like, who else would you see getting a bit of a run? Do you see anyone in particular yourself that you mentioned the Drew Clare and Bridge lads there, and I touched on Jaron Morrissey. Anyone in attack or around there?
Another that I actually like to see in the backs get a bit of game time is Jack Fitzpatrick for Clonmerdale. A lad who's ready made for the intercounty game in terms of stature and physique, but in terms of experience, he has none of it. Like, so, he's a fellow who's consistently good at club level and playing centre back for Clonmerdale, marking top class forward every day he goes out. And consistently good, so he's a fella I'd like to see maybe thrown in. I'd love to see Sean Leland get a full league campaign now. Like he has got a nice bit of experience, and last year, in fairness, he was getting plenty of chances in the league, and had been going all right too, in fairness to him. So I'd like to see him get plenty of game time midfield, or even in a couple of games in the forwards, because we've seen how good he is for Tullochmore. And then in attack, Nyland, as you mentioned, his performance against Tip in the league last year, and then equally when he came on against Limerick for what was, I know he played a couple of minutes against Wexford, but that was pretty much his championship debut in essence, coming on into that cauldron, that was Croke Park that evening against a team like Limerick, with the game in the melting pot, and to come on and do what he did, that was hugely encouraging for me to take into this year. And the other couple of fellas that I like to see are Jam Mannion, purely based on club form, consistently brilliant for Capitagle, starting to come into the type of season that will bring out the best of him as well. I'd like to see him get plenty of game time over this league, and see how he takes to it. And Conor Walsh as well, naturally, just again, and I wouldn't even be overly pushing Conor Walsh, purely because like he still has an under-20 campaign ahead of him, and he's one of these fellas that you don't want these lads doing too much too soon, and it's brilliant for him just that he's in there first and foremost, and if he gets another bit of experience during the league, brilliant, and he's going to be developing for the future all the time, and I suppose positionally, there's a couple of bits that maybe their management would want to look at as well during this league. Like, personally, I'd love to see Finton get a few games at full back, see how he takes to it, because he's going to be going out marking quality forwards every day, and the same risk obviously that's in championship, that if you were doing it in championship, it's not there in the league. So personally, that's something I'd love to see.
For sure, I'd be the same. Like, I think it's a great opportunity. Maybe particularly now, maybe against Westmeath, to maybe let Dahi put the feet up. I'm sure he's probably had them up during lockdown anyway. But give him, maybe ease him back in against Limerick, we'll say, rather than Westmeath, and maybe give Finton a rattle at it, because we've seen him during club last year for St. Thomas. He was a revelation at fullback. I think any game I saw him in, he seemed to be on top of his marker in every single game. So, you know, the only natural step up would be to do it at inter-county level, and, you know, you can gradually ease yourself in. I suppose, you know, on the performances alone from last year, you know, that's even coming on, marking Hegarty and keeping Hegarty, you know, reasonably quiet for the second half would have surely have done so much for his confidence as well. Like, you know, I'd say he was one of the few to even get the better of Hegarty for 20 minutes, never mind an entire game, because nobody did it. We saw the problems that Joseph Cooney had with him, like, and you touched on that already, and it was your point, and it was very, very, very accurate, where you said that Joseph Cooney probably tried to hurl him, whereas Finton actually tried to stop him and make life misery, and he was hanging off him during the puck out, and, you know, and all this. But just on a few other players as well, what I wouldn't mind seeing would be Daniel Loftus. I think physically wise, he's you know, he wouldn't be far off an inter-county player. He's probably a bit more athletic looking maybe than his brother Sean, his older brother Sean. So he'd be, you know, another fella that's really kind of stood up during club championships in the past as well. And I suppose just looking through the names here, we probably touched on a lot of other defenders. You probably touched on the rest of them. But Stephen Barrett in Niamh Mellows is an interesting one. Like, probably arguably one of the best man markers in Galway club hurling over the last 3-4 years. You know, when Louis McQueen has a job or a detail, it's usually Stephen Barrett is the man that's given it, and he's told to put the shackles on. And like, Declan Cronin is there as well. We've eulogized about Declan Cronin in the past at club game as well. He was on our club team of the year last year. Like, we, you know, undoubtedly probably the best club cornerback in the game in Galway. You know, out and out cornerback. So be another, you know, he's probably gone away at that point. I know he was involved before, and then he was dropped, but he obviously went away, done his bit on the strength and conditioning, got called back in like a couple of other lads. Few other interesting suggestions. You actually, before I move on, you mentioned two lads there, and the Turlock Moore pair, Sean Linden and Conor Walsh. And as far as I know, I think they're out for the first game. I think just injury wise, I think I think they're under a bit of bother. I agree wholeheartedly with you, particularly in Sean Linan's case, because I would love to see him getting a right run of games, like it could, you know, regular games, maybe play him in midfield for a few, and then give him a rattle at attack, because we've seen how devastating he is in the club game. Another interesting one, and Niamh Mellows one, would be Jack Hastens. I'm fascinated by his introduction. He's a physical man. You know, he's made there in the half forward line. If you wanted someone like, now I'm not going to compare him to Garrod Hegarty, but a similar style to Garrod Hegarty would say. You know, he's brutish enough. He's physical. He can take a score from distance. And from what I've been hearing, he's supposed to have come back in phenomenal shape. You know, when the group have returned to collective training, I believe he's just in unbelievable nick. So he would be one that would be pushing as well. Jack Henning, I suppose, is an interesting one. You know, that second name, you're always going to garner headlines, aren't you? Particularly in the national media. I think when the players were released, it's nephew of Joe, Jack Henning. But, you know, it's probably time now. He's coming of age where he probably wants to be making a stamp at senior level, and this is probably a good league campaign for him to do that as well. You know, he's probably something that can offer us there is a bit of ball winning qualities in half forward line, or even in full forward if you wanted to go that route as well. But maybe, you know, he's tall, he's strong, he's probably good under the dropping ball as well. So who else is there that we probably, of the newer faces, you'd have Keane Burks, Matt and Rye, you know, another standout campaigner in Galway Club Championship. You know, always seems to have a big tally after his name in the match report. So, you know, it's a good sign. And Jamie Ryan would be another one as well. Like, there's not too many lads silkier than Jamie Ryan in Galway Club Hurling. So I'd imagine, like, we're going to have a fairly experimental team against Westmeath in particular. Who you clump with? Like, you're not going, like, we can rule that out now. You're not going to have 15 fresh faces in 15 different spots. Like, the win is still important, because if you somehow don't end up winning, you're under a bit of pressure then, oddly enough. Like, you kind of have to win. You have to win another game to avoid a relegation. Now, we shouldn't even be thinking like that, because you'd imagine, looking at the group of players there that Galway have, you'd probably, like, by all accounts, they should be beating Westmeath. And that's no disrespect to Westmeath. They're hurling in Joe McDonagh this year. They didn't get up last year. They didn't qualify for the Joe McDonagh final either. So the levels probably are completely different as to where the players are at. But You have huge options. Like Shane O'Neill has huge options. I'd imagine we're going to my bets would be we'll see a few frontliners probably rested for Westmeath. You'll see them probably reintroduced for Limerick, because that's going to be some test. And maybe then, after that, who knows? You're kind of speculating more than anything else. We just don't know. But I'm expecting. I'd be surprised if we saw Joe Kenning on the starting lineup against Westmeath. Probably maybe Dahi, maybe Conor Whelan, but Conor Whelan seems to play every day he's fit as well. So you don't know, maybe he's one of the more experienced campaigners that started. But you have a wealth of options, like just the squad there, and just the choice and the variety of player you have. It's fantastic to see.
Yeah, I think in an ideal world, I think Shane O'Neill would rather this game be in a couple of rounds' time, because all the names, well, a lot of the names you mentioned there, basically all the newcomers to the squad, like they've only actually joined the squad really 2 weeks ago, like, that's what's really going against them, I think, in terms of game time for this weekend. Now, in fairness, O'Neill said that they've integrated really well, and there's a few of them pushing really hard already, which is brilliant. But it does obviously take time to get used to the whole setup and that, and to get used to new players, and equally for the lads that are already there to get used to having these new fellas here. So I think, as I said, in an ideal world, he'd love the Westmeath game to be in a couple of rounds' time, where these fellas will have had the experience of being there at match days against the Limericks and the Tips and these, and then they've got more experience of playing, matches and training and doing all the drills with all the different lads and that side of things. But certainly in terms of the talent that's gone in there, I think the lads there that could make an impact during the year, which is fierce exciting. And as regards the team that goes out this weekend, I think a lot of the fellas that we mentioned that were there last year and used sparingly, they're the fellas I really want to see start this weekend. Your TJ Brennan's, Jaron Morrissey's, Jam Mannion's, Evan Nyland's, they're the fellas I really want to see start this weekend, because they have that experience of at least being in the setup and being there on match day. And remember, even last year in the championship, there was always one or two names on the 26 that changed. So all those players actually have experience of being in the 26 on championship day, whether or not they even played or not. But the experience of actually even being there will have stood to them to take into this year. So team selection is going to be very interesting. I think there will be a nice mix between youth and experience and inexperience. So it'll be fascinating to see. And the thing is, Westmeath are going to be targeting this one as well straight off the bat. And this is probably their best chance of maybe picking up points as well, because it's the first game of the season and there's that sort of unknown factor. So look, it'll be interesting to see. But you'd be expecting a comfortable Galway win at the end of the day. I suppose we talk about the new season and that element of unknown, and we have new rules, of course, coming into effect this weekend with the new rules surrounding the cynical fouling and that, and the sin bin and the possible penalties being brought in. So I suppose just a quick explainer for anyone that doesn't know. Obviously, the cynicism of the professional fouling it heightened hugely last year, in particular, I thought. And at the end of the year, I couldn't see how they couldn't do anything about it. I wouldn't have had the same opinion in years prior to that, but last year in particular, I thought it did go too far, and we weren't seeing goals in games, and they just they obviously weren't going to be as good a watch without fans in the first place. But there was a feel of a sort of a challenge again feel about some of them, because lads were saying, like, sure, I might just take my point here, because if I go any closer, I'll be rugby tackled. So I see, like, I wonder with the likes of Cork now, I wonder will they get rid of Dougie Howlett, because I know he has some sort of title down there with him, but maybe he's in as the tackling coach. I don't know. But be interesting to see how that one goes. But I suppose first and foremost, what do you think of the new rules, David? If that they're saying that if the player is dragged to the ground basically, or tripped or professionally fouled inside the D or inside the 20-meter line when a goal scoring opportunity is on, that there'll be that player who commits the foul will get a 10-minute sin bin, and there'll be a penalty awarded for the team who were denied the chance. So what are your thoughts on it?
Firstly, I probably agree that something needed to be done. I was more than yourself. I was probably on the fence last year as well, to a point that it was kind of just an element of the game where you would cynically drag someone down for a finish if it meant your team were going to win. You've just seen it. But I do have a couple of issues with this particular one, and I think the actual wording is a bit of a problem as well, like, because during it you have to tackle the person basically to the ground. So if you pull them back, they stay standing up. It's not a sin bin, like, or the instance of Niall Burke last year with Hugh Lawler holding the hurl.
Yeah,
that's actually not a sin bin either. So that, like, there's instances like that I'd have issue with. Like, the attacker now is obviously going to be, if he is pulled back, he's obviously told to hit the deck. Any good management team are going to tell him, which is going to probably we're going to see a lot more swan dives and soccer type stuff as well. It's just going to be the case now, because lads will not get the sin bin aspect of the foul if they don't hit the ground. So it's going to change the way tackling is done. I suppose you're probably going to have probably kind of give that lad a yard of space in front of you, so that when he runs at you, you have the yard, and maybe can kind of stop him that way to prevent a goal scoring opportunity. Where Pádraig Mannion mentioned last week as well when we were chatting to him, that he probably expects something like that to be the case. He expects probably actually an increase in points because defenders are going to give them that yard to maybe give the forward a yard to have the shot. My other issue with it, and another issue I would have with it, would be when the need is greatest, the punishment isn't the same. Like, with 2 minutes to go on the clock, every lad is going to take the sin bin still. Like, if you're winning by 3-4 points, 2 minutes left on the clock, like, or you're into an injury time, you're going to drag down the fella. You're going to give away the sin bin. You're going to give away the penalty. If it's a clear chance like that, you're likely to do it. Particularly if you're 4 points up, because they still need 2 scores, and there's no guarantee that he'll finish it. And the element of the sin bin is you might only be off the field for 3 or 4 minutes, depending on how much is left on the clock. So that's a bit of an issue there. Like, we saw, we don't want to single anyone out, but Adrian Toohey last year on Shamie Cannon, like, he had, within the rule book, he had every right to drag him down. No, not every right. I'm sure people would say I'm wrong to say that, but if you're a good management team or you want your players to be doing something like that for a finish. But like, Adrian Toohey probably wasn't going to be gone he was only going to miss 5 or 6 minutes of hurling for a finish. Yeah. Like, the punishment isn't cognizant with, like, if you do that in the first 10 minutes, you're gone for 10 minutes. It's fair enough. It's an adequate punishment. But I think something needs to be done in the last 10 minutes to make it warranted. Like, whether it's, you can keep your player or he goes for the minutes, and it's like, it's terrible to say, but an automatic goal maybe, like, would that be worth a try? Because that would be, it works well in rugby when instances that happen, that the officials do give the automatic try, we'll say, or penalty try. That would be something I would be worried about, that it's not going to, when the need is greatest and the condition is, that you're only going to miss 5 or 6 minutes for your team, you might be 3 or 4 points up. It's probably not going to be the end of the world if they're down to 14. Probably a lot of teams will be able to cling on. They'll be able to kill a few minutes through an injury here and there. That would be my only thought on it. Are you happy with the wording of the ruling, or what do you think of it personally, Patrick?
No, I agree with a lot of what you said there, pretty much all of what you said. And another, I suppose, issue for me is that just the pressure that it's going to put on referees, and the fact that it's totally, they're on their own basically when it comes to this. And you might have the input of a linesman or an umpire here and there, but by and large they're on their own, and they're going to take the fall for the decision no matter what way it comes. And it's all open to interpretation, in that what was deliberate, what wasn't deliberate. Was it a clear goal scoring chance, or was there somebody coming across that was going to stop it? Because in rugby, for example, if that's, if I tackled you without the ball and you were about to get a try and there was no one else within sight, that would be a penalty try straight away. But if I had another defender coming across that even had a chance of getting to you to deny the penalty, to deny the try, that would mean it wouldn't be a penalty try. But that's all decided by way of replays, much going up to the TMO, whereas referees aren't going to have that benefit. It's all what they see in the instant. So I just think the pressure on referees is going to be absolutely scandalous. But because it was always easy to see last year when we were looking back on the Sunday game and on a Sunday night, that was clearly a drag down. Should definitely be a penalty and a sin bin, and if you're looking at it this year, but that's us looking back at replays on a Sunday night, whereas a few hours earlier watching the match, sure, if you were a Tip supporter and you saw Seamus Cannon getting dragged down, you'd be saying it at the time, but equally, if we were Galway people and we saw that, you'd be claiming, oh, sure, it was outside the D and all this, and so, and there was a Galway man in front of him that could have stopped him and all this. So that's the concern for me. But I do think that something had to be done, and I think it's a case of trialing it and see how it goes. It should improve things to some degree, and you'll be hoping lads just don't take it into their hands and even make referees have to make that decision. Like we'll say, if you think about some of the brilliant defensive plays we've seen in the last decade, you think of JJ Delaney's hook on Callan in 2014 and Pádraig Mars and Conor Cooney in 2016. Like I can't remember a defensive play like that being made since Pádraig Mars made that goal saving hook, because he could have just dragged him and thrown him onto the ground, and that no bother Pádraig Mars to do it anyhow. But that option was there for them, and it wasn't in the game even that long ago, really. And instances like that were very few and far between. So that's the concern I have with it. But look, it's a case of seeing how we go, and no one's going to lose their minds if it happens and they get round in the league here and there. Well, we say that now, but we'll see if we end up in the wrong side. We'll see what we're like. But yeah, look, I suppose that's kind of it by and large now for the first week, David. I suppose it's a case of going out and seeing how we get on, and it's brilliant that we're going to be able to. Well, I don't know about going to the match yet. I'm sure you're going. I haven't heard yet on my front whether or not I can go, but at least we have the comfort of the television. Worst case scenario, so it'd be brilliant for the whole county to be able to sit down, and listen to the game or watch the game. Exciting, and just a couple of things to tell you about before we finish off. Firstly, again, as I said at the start, thanks a million to Tony Burke Motors for coming on board as our sponsor for all of our Allianz League coverage. It's brilliant to have you on board, lads. And as I say, head over to tonyburkemotors.ie if you're looking for a new purchase to take with you for 2021. Secondly, we've joined Instagram just in the last couple of weeks, and we're going to use it a lot for match day coverage and bringing you kind of behind the scenes and what it's like for us on a day at the match. And because obviously fans are still a while away from even getting back going to matches, so log on to Instagram and follow us at tribetalk_Galway, so be sure to join us there and follow us. And lastly, we have a competition going this week, and it pretty much runs out, I suppose, in terms of if you wanted to have a chance to win. It's going to end by the commencement of play on Saturday. The Fantasy Hurling League is kicking off obviously this weekend, and we have our own mini league going. So the prize for the winner, if you can beat myself and David and Angus Callan has got his team in. Chunky, if he ever has 5 minutes to spare, he'll get his team in as well. He's assured me he will. So the 4 of us have it done anyhow, and we've got a few other good names there join the league. So log on to fantasyhurling.ie and you'll find the code for our league to log in and join the league. You'll find that on all our social media pages, and we'll be reminding you of it in the next couple of days anyhow. So log on there and do up a team and join our league. And if you win, you'll get a new signed Galway jersey. So that'll be a nice way to start off the season. So I think I have all the bookkeeping taken care of there, David, as far as I know.
Top job.
Yeah, no script or anything, so happy enough. Right, look, we'll sign off there for the first week. We'll, as I say, look forward to the weekend and getting back looking at games, and we'll be back here again next week to review the Westmeath game and look ahead to Limerick the week after. So it's going to be all go from here on. So enjoy the weekend. We'll chat to you next week.
If you want a better tomorrow, start heading for it today. Visit Tony Burke Motors, your local Toyota retailer, and find out how you can lower your emissions and pay less tax than a diesel with Toyota's incredible range of self-charging hybrid cars. There's never been a better time to join the thousands of Galway drivers who've made Toyota the #1 selling car brand in Galway for the 7th consecutive year. Visit tonyburkemotors.ie to search our fantastic selection of approved used cars. Start your electric journey in a Toyota hybrid today. Contact Tony Burke Motors on 480-123 or email sales@tonyburkemotors.ie. Toyota, built for a better world.